Welcome to the Community Christian Podcast. We're in the middle of this series on Ruth, and Hunter is joining me today, and he got a chance to preach on Sunday to the Morgan Hill campus, and it'd be fun to have a little conversation with you about this. I love that we have different people from different generations speaking, and it was so cool for me as I stood outside the last Morgan Hill service to have people coming out, even who I know are like 30 plus years older than you, have been married as you're a single young man, and you're like, man, Hunter was right on. That was true. I wish I knew some of that when I was dating. Or some people who are back dating again, or maybe close to your age, like, oh, that's just good information to think through, right? Because this whole dating thing and then the desire to be married, it's important because this whole marriage thing is a God idea. So I just really appreciated the way you communicated it, and from your viewpoint and your experience, right? And as a guy who has grown up in a little different time than I have, as dating has shifted so much. So as you, right, when you're on a college campus, you were at Moody.
Yes, right.
Like, it's one thing when people are face to face. I'm sure there's a lot of people who dated. I know you've been to a number of weddings recently. What's it like? Because I was talking to some other guys your age who are post-college, and they've moved right away from wherever that college environment was. And part of them, they're going, I'm wondering how I'm going to meet a woman, or where that'll come along. And obviously, the couple guys that I talked to this weekend, they're believers. They're hoping to find someone who obviously is a follower of Jesus. But what's that like, shift out and then into the world we live in today, where so much is done online? Or like, how are you seeing people meet each other, I guess, as you talk with young adults?
That's a challenge. That's a great question. I think in some ways that is one of the big questions that swirls around dating, especially for my generation, is how do you meet people, right? Because the way that our society works and the way that we build relationships is so different than it used to be, right? Not saying, it's better or worse or it's harder. It's just every kind of time comes with its own challenges. And one of the challenges that we have, and I know I found this for myself being a young person, is what does it look like to build some of that connection? And that's part of why, I don't know if you noticed in my sermon, I was preparing the notes, and there were some things that were super important, but ultimately, I can't cover everything, right? The topic is so big.
Yes.
How do you deal with, how do you start a relationship? How do you date? And I found myself putting in points and saying, hey, there are some older people in this church that have wisdom about that have, older person wisdom about how to build a relationship that younger people just innately don't have. And they need to be trained by those people to learn some of those, call them traditional ways of building connection. And so to me, that's one of the things that's been really important is even just spending time with your family or spending time with older people. They can give you so much wisdom about what it looks like to connect with someone. And I think maybe for my generation, they like to say that we have really particular challenges that are really hard. But the challenges are, in relationships, they're the same for every generation. And we just need some of that wisdom to help us begin to cultivate those relationships. And if we're intentional about it and we're God honoring in it, I think that there's a lot for us there.
Yeah. I was really pleased. I had a couple in our church that's engaged, and they hit me up because they're having a wedding later this year, and they asked me to officiate, but they said, hey, can we have dinner with you and Dawn, with you and your wife, right? And I just think, man, that's really wise of them, right? Because they could meet with me and we could talk about the ceremony, but if you meet with Dawn and I, then we get to talk more in a whole about relationships and what we've gone through, and hopefully they can glean some things from us. And I think what you're saying, Hunter, is so important. Like, when you see people in the church that are in a stage maybe ahead of you in some way, whatever that may be. It might be serving, might be being a godly business leader, whatever. They might work the same kind of work, or in relationship like marriage. If you see a couple in that arena that is doing well, like, pick their brain. Yeah. Say, can we take you out to lunch? Can I take you out to lunch and learn from you? Tell me a little of your story, because you're right. There's all that life experience that's helpful, because marriage is this beautiful thing designed by God, but we know the enemy is always coming against it, right? And there's so many wounds that come from dating relationships, or wanting to date, or being rejected, or marriages that are struggling, right? We know the enemy's going to come against that. And so you're right. Any wisdom that we can get is so helpful. And it's just cool to hear you speak that from the generation you're from, and speaking that into other young adults. when you work with young adults right now,
Yeah.
we know that the stats on marriage have changed as far as how many people in their 20s are getting married. We know it's moved later,
Right.
fewer people are getting married, but I still, as a whole, I see people, whether in their 20s or 50s, majority of people want to partner with somebody. There's this desire there. And again, I think it's a godly desire for most people. I mean, is that what you still see in young adults, even though people are waiting longer because of education, career, whatever? Like, if people are honest, what are their desires? What are you seeing?
Actually, this has been a really unique thing for me because you're right. I do young adults ministry with people my age. And of course, when you're young and you're excited about relationships, that's something that you want and something you pursue. But also, me being me, I'm single and I'm really, really happily single.
Yeah.
And I feel really fortunate to be able to say that. But I know for a lot of people, it can be kind of confusing or distracting. And oftentimes people are trying to get some, or we'll say this, they want something, but they don't always know what they want. And so actually this was something that I scratched from my notes when I was preparing, but I've done a lot of study on the concept of love because I think it's a really interesting concept. And if you study it throughout its history, this idea that the love of your life is a romantic partner is actually a pretty novel idea. It's pretty new. Not the whole, the whole history of the world didn't necessarily think that. Oftentimes, the concept of love was bound up with religious experience and relationships, of course, and family and all sorts of things. And I think that oftentimes people are looking for love, right? It's innate in us. It's how God made us to find love. And ultimately, we know that God is love, and he is the one who brings that fulfillment and that satisfaction to us. But we have to be really careful when our culture tells us that your desire for love is only going to get fulfilled in this romantic relationship. Oh, guess what? Marriage is hard. Relationships are hard. It's not that simple. It's not that easy. And we need to just be thoughtful as we try to pursue those things. And so that's what I try to do with my young adults when I'm talking with them. And I think that's been a unique challenge for them because most of them have never met someone like me who is really quite happy the way I am.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm not closed off to having a relationship, but ultimately it's not something that consumes my mind and my heart. It's not something that distracts me from what God has for me. I know that I have greater purpose and I have certain desires that I know will be fulfilled in God. And I think that's been a unique challenge to navigate with my group. And I think just recently, I've really been seeing the fruit of how that perspective can be really freeing for people. How when our culture and our people get fixated on this idea of love and a romantic partner, it can be trapping in some ways. We're trying to make this person be something that they can't be. And ultimately, when we find our satisfaction and our contentment in God, that brings so much freedom, a freedom that will actually prepare you better for a relationship or for marriage.
Yeah. I love what you said. And I love, because I know you've worked hard, because we've had conversations over the last few years about like, I know if a great person comes up there, you're like, man, I have a attraction to them, right? And in a healthy way, you're balancing that. Like, what is that attraction, right? What's their character? Some of the things we talked about today, that there's been a desire there, that you've dated some, but also there's this contentment in you. And you're right. It can be so consuming for people, the desire to have someone, to think that I will find wholeness there. And we just got to remind people, like, humans are going to let us down. We're gonna do it to other people too. We're not gonna meet an expectation. We're not gonna acknowledge a feeling, whatever it is. We're not gonna give the right time that we either think we deserve or that they think they deserve from us. And so you're right. There's a wholeness that comes when we understand, like, what we need is in Christ. And there's a fulfillment and a contentment that puts us in a better place, as we talk about developing spiritual character, to be a great marriage partner for somebody, because now I'm not looking to them for my fulfillment, which is unhealthy, right? Like, a good marriage is not two people somehow coming together and now you're complete. No, it's two complete people in Christ coming together, right? And God bringing that together, then utilizing that. And so you're right. For people, and it doesn't matter what your age is, that desire can be so consuming. We can miss out on the other things that God is doing and wants to do in us, right? It be, thought number one all the time, and it can be a distraction from what God's actually wanting to do. Any other practical dating advice from your experience? And sometimes, watching from a distance. And here again, just because your age or because you're not married doesn't mean you can't speak into it, right? You understand biblical truth. Again, you've done a lot of study. You've walked with friends who've gone through ups and downs of dating. You've had your own ups and downs of dating. So anything else that sticks out as we talk about this?
Oh, that's a great question. Kind of practical advice. There's a couple things I would say. The first one is, if you're a guy or a girl, guess what? People love humble people who listen well. And man, I happen to be in this awkward circumstance sometimes where I'm trying to be a good friend to someone. And ultimately, they're like, man, I wish that my partner was a little bit like you. And that's an awkward thing for me to be in. But here's what I would say. If that's true and what people are looking for is a partner who is kind and humble and listens, then that's something you got to work on. And that's something you got to practice, right? And I know for me, I spend a lot of time just going and spending time with people, right? I'll go talk with a dude and I'll talk with them for 2-3 hours, right? And just have no schedule with them. And I'll tell you, that teaches you how to build connection with someone. It teaches you how to put the needs of someone else before yourself. And I think a lot of this is, it's a lost art in a sense that people are practicing relationship less and less today. And I think that, man, it's hard to get out of the culture that we're in. I mean, part of it is you need to just unplug from your phone. Maybe you need to unplug from social media. Maybe you need to unplug from the TV and just go and have those in-person connections with people. And guess what? If you learn how to love people well and you learn how to be humble, that's attractive to people and they value that. And that's important. And so honestly, it would just be that. It'd be go and continue to practice with people around you.
I love what you said there. Right? As I've walked with people over the years, I'm going to reiterate what he said for the married couples. This is so important. I find that most affairs, most damage in relationship comes, right? Because somebody has one of those needs met, particularly someone else is listening to me, right? I've lost that. We talked about connection this week, and part of that's communication with my marriage partner. And somehow there's some hurt there, and I start talking about that, or somebody else starts listening to me and caring for me, and there's a natural draw there. And it's not even the intention at the beginning. They're not looking for an affair, but all of a sudden somebody's meeting that need because the ability to be listened to be heard, right, to be seen, right, however you want to say those words, is huge, and it's a big deal. So as this week we talked about, I just want to reiterate, character. Your character matters,
right?
As Hunter was saying, who you are as an individual, and then you need to look for a person of character, and don't ignore the red flags if you're dating that you see. The second thing is you got to explore connection, which is exactly what we we're just talking about. You've got to give time. So, right, if you're dating, obviously you need to be intentional. If you're married, you need to be intentional about taking time to talk, connect, to plan together, all of those things. We can lose that in the busyness, particularly as people start to have kids and run around and businesses start to grow or careers start to expand. You've got to be intentional. And what's stealing from that is all the digital time that we have. We've got to put the phone down. I know some couples who have fasted in the last year for seasons of time from TV. And they realize over that month or over the time that they gave that up, and they spent that time together in the evening playing a game, talking, hanging out instead of just turning on the TV even, has been just transformative for their marriage. Then we talked about being considerate. Okay, how can I bless? We see that in Boaz. How can I just bless Ruth? Before there's even any sense of romantic relationship there. And again, the romantic relationship in that ancient world looks a little different now than us just wanting to build everything about romance and feeling. There's more to the relationship than just that. And then that last part that we talked about, why am I blanking on it?
Confirmation,
which is huge.
Yeah.
Which you've been able to do for some of your friends. I think as you've been the best man in some weddings, they probably said, hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
Or you've been able to speak in and say, hey, I see this good in your relationship. Or, hey, this might be something you guys need to talk about, right? That could come up later. This could be a tension point for you guys as someone from the outside. I can see that. And you've had a chance to speak into that. And I encourage you, as you date particularly, allow people to speak into you and let them speak honestly and be willing to hear it, because when we become infatuated, again, it's a wonderful feeling. that idea of falling in love and being drawn to this person, but it also can cause us to be blind to some things. So get some sound feedback from people who know you well. Yeah. Hey, it's been fun to talk about Ruth. I mean, when we talk about dating and marriage, it always brings things up for people.
Yeah.
It's something we talk about. It's something we watch a lot of TV around. Relationships are a huge part of who we are because we serve a relational God. And so, again, how you go about those things, how you build up your own character will make a huge difference in how your dating life and your marriage life obviously plays out. So God bless you. We look forward to seeing you Thursday or next Sunday as we continue in Ruth.